Sir, you are in direct violation of Ordinance 3B. This party must cease immediately.
Oh, come on, it's just getting started. Here, I brought you a little something.
I was in the middle of a party when I saw the flashing lights. It wasn't the fun kind, like when a neighbor brings out a ridiculous light display for the holidays. No, this was the kind of flashing that screamed trouble, the kind that made your stomach drop into your shoes. My heart sank as I squinted through the window, trying to make sense of the situation. Sure enough, there was a patrol car parked in front of my house. 2 officers were standing next to my front porch, exchanging glances, while my friends tried to keep the vibe alive despite the fact that I could already see the handwriting on the wall. The HOA had done it again, kicking me when I was just trying to have a good time. I had just invited about 15 people over for a casual gathering, nothing crazy. We were out on the porch, laughing, talking, and enjoying the last of the summer warmth, when one of my guests, Nate, pointed out a piece of paper taped to my front door. I opened it up and, of course, it was a citation and HOA ticket. Violation of community rules, it said, for hosting a gathering in a common area of the neighborhood. Now, mind you, this wasn't some wild, loud, chaotic rager. It was a group of friends sitting on the porch, drinking some wine and playing cards. No complaints from anyone, right? Wrong. I had unknowingly crossed the invisible line of our HOA's overreaching rules, and I was about to pay the price. I didn't panic. I went out to talk to the officers, thinking maybe I could reason with them. I mean, they had to see how ridiculous this was, right? I walked over with a friendly wave, but the officers didn't exactly seem like they were in the mood for chit-chat. One of them, a man with a bored expression, just waved his hand at me and said, "We're just here because the HOA called about the noise." Noise? It wasn't even dark yet, and our music was at a reasonable volume. I glanced around, and there wasn't a single neighbor standing at their windows glaring at us. But of course, there was no way to argue with the HOA ticket in my hand, which clearly stated the violation is disturbance in the common area. My guests were scattered like ants, hiding behind bushes or pretending to admire the flowers. I immediately tried to appeal the ticket. I sent an email to the HOA board, laying out the situation and asking for a little common sense. I even pointed out that there was no noise complaint or any disturbance in the area. The response? Nothing but silence. No acknowledgement, no effort to explain or even consider the situation. I wasn't asking for a full-blown party pass, just a little bit of grace for a small gathering that didn't even come close to violating any sensible rule. But of course, the HOA was more interested in following their rules to the letter than in making reasonable decisions. My neighbors? They acted like they were suddenly struck mute. No one stepped forward to vouch for me, and they all seemed too afraid of rocking the boat. It felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but the HOA was not going to win this one without a fight. I had a choice to make, either roll over and take the ticket or go down swinging. The HOA had crossed a line. They could ticket me all they wanted, but I wasn't about to let them make me a target without giving them a taste of their own medicine. I had an idea. I wasn't going to resort to childish pranks or go directly for the low road. No, I was going to outsmart them with cold, hard facts and use their own rules against them. I lined up photos, emails, and call logs in a binder, ready to take this to the next level. It was time to make my revenge as legal and devastating as possible. It took me weeks to dig through everything, but I started building a case. I filed public records requests, and when the paperwork came back, I saw the truth. The HOA had been issuing citations left and right for even the smallest infractions. Not just for noise, either. They'd been ticketing people for things like leaves falling too far from the trees, parking in spots they deemed reserved, and for disturbances that had nothing to do with reality. I filed complaint after complaint. Patterns of false reports can be prosecuted, and I had enough of a trail to prove that they were harassing me and others. The timeline was clear, too. Item 1, April 5th at 4:27 a.m., a false trespass call from one of the board members. Item 2, July 12th at 9:03 p.m., a complaint about excessive laughter during a dinner party. Each item added weight to my case, and I wasn't stopping until they realized they'd picked the wrong person to mess with. By the time I'd compiled everything, I had a file that landed with 63 pages of evidence. Yes, 63 pages. I even had timestamps, emails, and testimony from a few other neighbors who weren't too afraid to talk. I wasn't going to let this go. I was going to take it all the way. I contacted the local news station to see if they would be interested in covering the story. At first, they were skeptical, but after seeing the mountain of evidence I had, they were all in. A few days later, they arrived with cameras. The next HOA meeting was the perfect place to drop the bomb. I showed up at the meeting armed with my binder and a determination that made even the board members visibly nervous. I started with the false trespass report from April and then worked my way through the list. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer, and I could see the faces of the board members changing from smug confidence to open dread. The room was buzzing with whispers. I was finally getting the attention I'd been denied for so long. My neighbors, who had previously acted like they didn't want to get involved, were now filming the whole thing on their phones. A few laughed, some commented on how ridiculous the whole thing was, and others looked genuinely shocked by the sheer audacity of the HOA's tactics. By the end of the night, I had the whole board on the defensive. The mayor even showed up to the meeting and, after reviewing my evidence, had a few choice words for the HOA president. "This is harassment," he said. "And it stops now." The police weren't far behind, and soon they were investigating the board members for repeated misuse of power. The inspector showed up, and within a week, the HOA was under investigation for violating several local ordinances. It felt like I was watching a slow-motion train wreck, but I couldn't stop smiling. Finally, the power had shifted. The HOA wasn't untouchable anymore. Things went back to normal after that, but not for the HOA. They were forced to issue public apologies to the community, and the board members were either voted out or faced penalties. The whole ordeal taught me one thing: when the system fails, you have to be smarter than the system. You use the rules to your advantage, and you never back down. I'd gotten my revenge, and more importantly, I'd made a real difference. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.